watch the show, there's no need to read this unless you feel reading it would be more enjoyable than watching it. Welcome back to another book review. Today we are going to be talking about the book Fate, the Winx Saga. Now, if you don't know, Fate, the Winx Saga is based on a cartoon that was originally from France called The Winx Club. Now, The Winx Club is about a girl who finds out she's a fairy and then goes to the magical realm to figure out her backstory and who she is and her powers and just figure out more about herself as she comes into her powers as a fairy. Well, this, Fate, the Winx Saga, is a live-action, more grown-up version of that came out 2018, I think. And honestly, this show-turned-book feels like a completely different show with the names and places tacked on. But we will get into that in a second. For now, let's talk about the characters. So the characters in this book consist of Bloom, a girl from Earth who finds out she's a fairy, a fire fairy, Aisha, a water fairy, Musa, a mind fairy. In the original, she was actually a music fairy. I don't know why they changed it. Maybe it was to save on the special effects budget, but in the new one, she's a mind fairy. Tara, who was originally Flora in the original, is an earth fairy, and Stella, a light fairy and princess to the throne of Celeria, where the magic realm is set in, and where Althea is set in. In the original, it was set in like the magic's world, and Celeria was just another kingdom, with Althea being in a completely different realm. Now, these characters, at first, they're supposed to be friends, but they're like constantly at each other's throats, constantly finding ways to like pick at each other and like be rude, and like you're sitting there thinking, okay girls, you're supposed to be friends, you're calling each other friends, but you're constantly doing like backhanded compliments, or you're sitting there putting the other one down, or just wanting the other one to go away and shut up. Like, you don't seem like friends at all. But it's kind of this forced friend dynamic where they all share the same dorm and they have to get used to it because that's where they live. I had a hard time following any of these characters because there is so much drama between them and going on. And then you have the specialists, the ones who work alongside the fairies and help kill the monsters. They're like the trained warriors of the group and don't really have any powers. And you have Sky, the like handsome prince who is always nice and a fixer. You have Ribbon, the bad boy who just wants to smoke weed, drink, and have sex. And then you have Dane, a kind of flip-flopper who you don't know where he stands with anybody, and he's just kind of there following Dan around like a puppy. You also have Beatrix, bad girl of the show and the book, and she was kind of a combination of all three of the tricks from the original Winx Club, and she's considered a fairy in this. So those are the characters. Let's get into my thoughts on this book. As I said, this is a reboot / live action remake of the originally Italian cartoon show Winx Club, made by Rainbow. Now, I'm not going to compare this book to the original because, as I said, it seems more like a completely different show with just the names of the characters and the magic slapped on. It doesn't feel like the Winx Club at all. And I know that's what the creators of the show / the writer of this book, because it is ripped directly from the show. So if you watch the show, you're getting exactly what this book is going to give you. I am actually rewatching the show right now, and honestly, I think the first time I watched the show, mainly because I was so excited to have a more grown-up version of something I grew up watching as a kid, that I was kind of way too harsh on the show And so this time as I'm watching it and as I was reading the book, I kind of tried to separate myself from the original as much as possible and just try to enjoy this book and the show as it is, because it is what it is. It's what we got. Even though they marketed it as this more grown-up version of a show that a lot of people grew up with. Like, the show had me wanting to be a fairy when I was little because I wanted to kick ass like the fairies in the show did. So to say I was a bit disappointed my first watch through of this story is not an understatement. I was highly disappointed. But as I was reading this book, and now that I'm in the middle of rewatching season 1, it's honestly not that bad. I think I was overly harsh on it. Do I feel like some of the story beats are a little rushed, like with how Bloom discovered her powers? Bloom discovers her powers one night when she gets into an argument with her mom because she is more an introvert and a homebody. So she likes to work on her antiques and be to herself, where her mom is like, no, go out, meet people, have fun. Honestly, I can relate because I'm more of a homebody too. Like, I do like to go out and have fun, but when I want my space, I want my space. But so they get into this huge argument because of that. And that night, or the next day, her mom takes her door away, which is absolutely horrible idea of a punishment. I was like, Mom, would you ever do that to me? And she goes, absolutely not. A kid deserves their privacy, and punishing them by taking their door away is not a punishment. That's psychotic behavior. So her mom takes her door, and she understandably gets really pissed about this. And as she's just fuming and fuming and fuming over this, her room all of a sudden catches fire, and it leads to her mom's room, where her mom ends up getting third-degree burns. And that's when Bloom discovers, what the heck am I? What is happening? And she ends up being found by the headmaster of the school, Mrs. Dowling. And from there, it's all about her trying to discover her journey as a fairy and figure out what is happening and why she is what she is. She also discovers that she is a changeling. And if you don't know what a changeling is, it's a fairy baby that was switched with a human baby at birth. It's considered a barbaric practice and is no longer practiced in centuries. The only reason that Bloom was switched with the human baby at birth was because the baby was going to die anyway, and Bloom needed a place to hide after some destruction to her home. So that's why she was left there. Now, this book is weird. You have the chapters, which are set up as fairy tales, and then you have the different perspective breaks in between each one. But for some reason, we follow every single character in this book, including Mrs. Dowling. The only one we don't really get in the mind of is Beatrix. And every single person, except for Bloom, is written in the third person. Even though Stella, Musa, Tara, and Aisha are considered main characters too, and the main 5 of the series, the only one written in first person is Bloom's. Now at first that was very jarring to read. I've never read a book that had one perspective in one point of view and another perspective in another point of view. But after a couple of pages and a couple of chapters, I started to get used to the fact that Bloom was the only one written in first person because she is the main character of the book and of the show. Excuse me if you can hear my stomach. I just got done exercising a while ago and I haven't eaten lunch yet, so. But this story is definitely more adult. There's a lot of cussing, there's a lot of talk of sex, there's a lot of substances like weed and alcohol used. There's a lot of blood and gore and just stuff happening. It's more like a horror action show than it is like the feel-good, magical girl type of show that it used to be. And honestly, It's okay. I'm not gonna say it's the best show out there. It is most certainly not the best adaptation out there by any means, because like I said, it seems like a completely different book slash show from the original, with just the original's names tacked onto everything. It does not at all feel the same. And once again, Netflix being Netflix, we're left on a fucking cliffhanger because Netflix has a habit of canceling all their shows. I'm still mad about Julie and the Phantoms. That was such a good show, and you gave us a cliffhanger at the end that had me so intrigued, only to find out there was never going to be another season. So thank you for that, Netflix. Get your shit together, please. We're tired of you canceling good shows after a cliffhanger. Stop it. So I'm hoping that with this being turned into a book, someone else will pick up the story and continue the story, because I want to see what happens after one of the characters takes over the school, and I want to see where it goes from there, because I am so intrigued. And honestly, I like the story now that I kind of detached it from the original, because it's nothing like the original. It's a surprisingly quick read, even with the different switches in perspective. And like I said, if you've already watched the show, there's no need to read this unless you feel reading it would be more enjoyable than watching it, because it is beat for beat from the show, because it's a novelization of the show. So that's my thoughts on the Winx Club. Next, I've already started, you can't see my bookmark because it's in there in the page, I've already started The Golden Compass. I have read this before, like in 2017, 2018, and I haven't reviewed it yet because I didn't have it when I had my channel. So I think I'm going to reread this because I just recently got His Dark Materials, the show, on DVD as a Christmas present, and it has me really wanting to go back and reread this series because I love this series, and I want to re-explore it, and I want to talk about it, and I just want to enjoy it again. Okay, so I hope to see you next time. Bye, guys.